My brother told our parents, "She's just a woman. Give the family business to me." And they did. They completely shut me out. I was heartbroken until the lawyer gave me a knowing smile and said, "Actually, your grandfather left something just for you." The moment my brother saw it, his smug smile vanished. I never thought my own family would betray me. But when money and power are at stake, family ties mean nothing. I grew up in a family where business was everything. My grandfather started a small manufacturing company in the 1950s. It began with just one workshop, but over time, it grew into a successful business with contracts across the state. It wasn't a billion-dollar empire, but it gave us a good life. After my grandfather retired, my dad and uncle took over. The plan was always for the next generation to continue the legacy. That meant my older brother, Brian, and me. I loved the company. I spent my summers learning everything: how to handle payroll, logistics, and day-to-day operations. By 25, I knew the business inside and out. Brian, not so much. He acted like the company belonged to him just because he was the eldest son, but he didn't actually care about running it. He partied through college, barely graduated, and came home with a business degree he never used. While I worked 60-hour weeks keeping things running, he strolled in late, sat through a few meetings, and then disappeared to play golf or hang out at expensive bars. Still, I believed my parents would be fair when the time came. I was wrong. A few months before my grandfather passed, my parents called a family meeting. We sat in the dining room, and I could already tell something was off. My brother had this arrogant, satisfied look on his face. Then my dad said, "We've decided that Brian will take over the company when we retire." I froze. "What?" I asked. "What about me?" My mom patted my hand like I was a child. "Sweetheart, you'll still be involved. You'll help your brother." Help him? I had spent years working my ass off, and they expected me to just assist Brian while he ran the company into the ground. Brian leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Come on, sis. It's not personal, it's just logical. I'm the eldest son. I'll be the face of the company. You can handle the little details, the stuff women are good at." I saw red. I turned to my dad, waiting for him to correct Brian, to say anything, but he just nodded. I looked at my mom. She smiled like she had just given me a gift. "You'll still have a good salary, dear. We're not leaving you with nothing." I pushed my chair back. "I can't believe this." "Don't be dramatic," Brian said. "It's just business." Just business. That night, I cried, not just because of the company, but because I finally understood. I would never be equal to Brian in my parents' eyes. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would always be just the daughter. So I made a decision. I was done. The next morning, I walked into my dad's office and quit. "You're overreacting," he said, shaking his head. "No," I replied. "I'm finally seeing the truth." And I walked away. I started looking for other jobs, but it wasn't easy. My whole career had been tied to the family business. I had the skills, but no outside connections. It was tough, but I refused to crawl back. Then, everything changed. A few months later, my grandfather passed away. Losing him was heartbreaking. Unlike my parents, he had always believed in me. After the funeral, we all gathered at the lawyer's office for the reading of his will. My parents weren't worried. My grandfather had sold off most of his belongings years ago, so they assumed everything would just officially go to them. The lawyer read through the usual things: donations, gifts to friends. Then he got to me. "To my granddaughter," he read, "I leave something I know she will appreciate." I frowned. I hadn't expected anything. Then the lawyer pulled out another folder. "This," he said, sliding it toward me, "is a separate trust. Your grandfather left you full ownership of his original workshop, the one he started the company in." My dad sat up. "What?" The lawyer continued. "The land, the building, and everything inside it. It's all yours." I blinked. I had no idea my grandfather still owned it. The company had moved to a bigger facility years ago, and I assumed the old workshop had been sold. But no, he had kept it. And now, it belonged to me. Brian chuckled. "Great, she gets an old warehouse. Meanwhile, I'm running an actual company." The lawyer smiled. "There's one more thing." He pulled out another document. "Along with the property, your grandfather also left you all of his original patents." Brian's smirk disappeared. "See, Our grandfather had invented several key manufacturing processes that our company still used. He had never sold the rights, just licensed them to the company, which meant that now I owned them. I looked at the papers in front of me. These patents weren't just valuable, they were essential. The company couldn't function without them. Brian turned to my dad, his voice tense. "Fix this," he hissed, but there was nothing they could do. My grandfather had planned this perfectly. And me? I was about to make my move. Brian's face turned pale. My dad opened his mouth, then closed it again, speechless. My mom gripped her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. I sat back, my fingers resting on the folder. My mind was racing, but I kept my expression calm. This wasn't just about getting back at Brian. This was my lifeline. The lawyer cleared his throat. "If there are no further questions, that concludes the reading of the will." Brian lost it. He turned to my dad. "Do something. You can challenge the will, right?" The lawyer gave Brian a polite, almost pitying smile. "Your grandfather's legal team made sure everything was airtight. There's no way to challenge the will." My father clenched his jaw. He wasn't used to losing. Then my mother tried a different approach. She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "Honey," she said sweetly, "let's be reasonable. That workshop has no real value to you. It's just an old building. Why don't you sign it over to your brother? We'll work out something fair." Fair. Like how it was fair when they handed the company to Brian without a second thought. Like how it was fair that they only saw me as his assistant. I looked at her hand on mine. Slowly, I pulled away. "No." She blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" I said no. My voice was steady. Brian scoffed. "Jesus, don't be a brat. You don't even know what to do with patents." I smiled. "Maybe, but you do." And that was the problem. I left that meeting with my head held high, but I knew the real battle was just beginning. I needed a plan. First, I met with a patent attorney to understand exactly what I had. And what I had was gold. The patents my grandfather left me covered critical processes that my family's company relied on every single day. Without them, production would shut down. The contract allowing my father's company to use them was set to expire in 6 months, and I wasn't renewing it. They must have realized this because 2 weeks later, my dad called. "Let's be practical," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Why don't we buy you out? We'll make a generous offer." "How generous?" A pause. Then he named a number. It was laughable. A lowball offer. They thought I'd panic and take the first deal. "No thanks," I said and hung up. 2 days later, Brian showed up at my apartment. He was furious. "Are you out of your damn mind?" he snapped. "You're screwing over the whole company because of some petty grudge." I crossed my arms. "You mean the company you stole from me?" His face turned red. "It wasn't yours." I tilted my head. "And yet you need my patents to keep it running." He clenched his fists. "Fine. Name your price." I smiled. "No." Brian looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean no?" "I mean I'm not selling. I'm keeping them." His eyes widened. For the first time in his life, he realized he wasn't in control. And I was just getting started. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as the company crumbled. My father tried to negotiate with other suppliers, but nobody could replicate the processes covered by my patents. Contracts fell through, clients backed out, investors got nervous. Then came the layoffs. Brian tried to hide the damage, but you can't hide mass layoffs. Employees started quitting. Suppliers pulled out. The company, our family's legacy, was dying. And I wasn't done yet. 3 months before the patents expired, I made my move. I reopened my grandfather's old workshop, took out a loan, hired the employees my father and Brian have fired or mistreated. And then I started my own company. But here's the best part. I licensed the patents to my own company, which meant that if my father's former clients wanted to keep using those patented manufacturing processes, they had to come to me. And they did. By the time the 6-month deadline hit, my father's company was on life support. Brian called me, his voice desperate. "Please, we'll pay whatever you want." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "No." And I meant it. For a while, I thought that was the end. My company was growing. My grandfather's legacy was safe. Brian was finally facing the consequences of his arrogance. But I should have known. Brian wouldn't go down quietly. About a year after my company took off, I got a call from a client. "You might want to see this," he said, sending me a link. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Brian had started a new company. And not just any company, he was selling a product that looked suspiciously like something from my grandfather's patented processes. A chill ran down my spine. Did he really think he could outsmart me? I hired a specialist to investigate, and sure enough, Brian had stolen proprietary data from my company. How? One of my employees, someone I had trusted, someone I had hired from my father's failing business, had been secretly working for Brian. I felt sick. This person had access to all of my company's secret designs and formulas, and they had been giving everything to Brian. Now he was using my stolen technology to compete with me. I was furious. Brian thought I wouldn't fight back. But if he wanted a war, he was getting one. I sued him immediately for stealing my ideas, for breaking patent laws, and for spying on my company. And I had proof. Emails. Stolen documents traced to his computer. Even the employee who betrayed me ended up confessing to save himself. Brian tried to delay things, but he had no real defense. He was caught. The judge didn't just rule against Brian, he destroyed him. All of his stolen products were banned from being sold. He was forced to pay me millions in damages. And worst of all, he was banned from working in my industry for 10 years. His company was finished before it even got off the ground. As for the employee who betrayed me, I made sure no one in the industry would ever hire him again. Brian lost everything. His mansion, gone. His fancy cars, taken away. His reputation, completely ruined. He had to file for bankruptcy. Last I heard, he was working a basic job at a failing company. And my parents? They begged me to forgive him. "He's your brother," my mother said, crying. "He made mistakes." I just looked at her and said, "No, he made choices." And I walked away. After everything they had done to me, I owed them nothing. And I never looked back. Some people never learn. A few years later, I heard one last thing about Brian. After failing in business, Brian tried making money through crypto and NFTs, but he scammed the wrong people. And let's just say, they weren't as forgiving as I was. I thought he would finally learn his lesson. After everything, losing the company, the lawsuit, going bankrupt, I expected him to stay down. But some people never learn. Years passed and my business was thriving. I expanded my grandfather's old workshop into a successful company, hiring real talent and creating innovations Brian could never dream of. We had top clients, a great reputation, and best of all, I never had to deal with my family again. Then, one day, I got a strange call. "Hey," my business associate said. "I just met with a guy named Brian. Says he used to run a big company and has game-changing ideas. He's looking for investors." My stomach dropped. "What kind of ideas?" I asked. A pause. "He wants to start a company in direct competition with yours." I shouldn't have been shocked. Brian was like a cockroach. No matter how many times he lost, he always found a way to crawl back. Worse, he was lying about his past, making himself look like a brilliant businessman who had been wronged by his evil sister. I could have ignored it, let him fail again. But this time, I wanted to end him completely. I made some calls, pulled some strings. And then, I became one of his investors. Not directly, of course. A business partner of mine, an older gentleman named Mr. Holloway, set up a meeting with Brian, pretending to be interested in his company. And Brian? He fell for it instantly. Brian arrived at the meeting acting like a king. He had a flashy business pitch, fake numbers, and a rehearsed sob story about how his jealous sister ruined his life. "All I need is the right backers," he said, "to take back what's mine." Mr. Holloway nodded along, pretending to be interested. Then he set the trap. "I like this idea," he said. "But before I invest, I need proof. Show me what you've got." Brian cabrioused. He had nothing. No real products, no patents, no working prototypes. So, like the idiot he was, he stole again. Brian rushed to create a product, one that was a complete copy of my company's patented design. Big mistake. We had already copyrighted it. The second he launched his first prototype, my lawyers pounced. But this time, we didn't just sue him. We went after his investors, suppliers, and anyone connected to him. The investors pulled out. The suppliers cut ties. The media exposed him as a fraud again. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, I bought the lease to his office and kicked him out. That was it. With no investors, no money, no reputation, and nowhere to work, Brian finally broke. I got one last email from him, a pathetic, desperate message. Please, I have nothing left. I made mistakes. Just help me. I stared at the screen. Then I deleted the email. Brian never recovered. Last I heard, he was waiting tables at a cheap restaurant in a rundown part of town. And my parents? They tried to guilt me, saying I had destroyed my own brother. I just smiled and said, no. He destroyed himself. And I walked away for good. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally free.